This is the My Lady ADHD podcast, a place to find common ground with other ADHDers, where we learn all about our ADHD brains while laughing alongside amazing guests who really get it. My name is Trina Haynes, and I'm so grateful you're here. Let's do this thing together. Hello. Thanks for coming back for round 2 of the My Lady ADHD podcast. This is officially the second episode, and I'm really happy that you're here. It's been a bit of a whirlwind launching the podcast. I'm diving back into all of these episodes that I've been recording for quite some time, and I'm remembering how awesome these conversations were. Only someone with ADHD would understand the fact that I've completely forgotten what these conversations were. But they did happen, and they were awesome. This episode features my friend Becca King. Becca is known as the ADHD Nutritionist. She helps adults with ADHD who are struggling with disordered eating, chronic dieting, and body image issues. She's also struggled with disordered eating because she does have ADHD, and we do talk a little bit about eating disorders in this episode, just as a trigger warning. This was one of the most relatable episodes that I've recorded to date because personally, food has been just such a complicated issue in my life. Speaking with Becca about ADHD and how that impacts our nutrition was so freaking validating for me. And I have a feeling it might do the same thing for you. This feels like a really good time to remind you to maybe check in with your body. Like, have you eaten lately? Have you taken a drink of water? Maybe think about that. I know we all need reminders for those things, and we get really tired of having reminders on our phone just like constantly dinging. So, here's a friendly reminder that you may need to eat or grab a drink. Either way, I'm really glad you're here, and I'm really excited for you to listen to this chat with Becca. So, let's dive in. Thank you, Becca. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I've been wanting to talk to you and pick your brain about ADHD and nutrition for a long time. So I'm thrilled when you agreed to come on and chat with me because I know you're a busy lady. So I really appreciate you being here. So first of all, maybe you can tell the listeners a little bit about you and maybe your background with ADHD and what you do.
So my name's Becca King. I, like most women with ADHD, noticed that I was struggling, or there was something off, I should say, in my earlier years. I always felt like there was something off about me or different, but I didn't really know what that was. Or couldn't put words to it, I guess. And then when I got to college and I no longer had that external support and that structure, and I could be impulsive and do whatever I wanted to now, it really made me realize I was struggling. It was my freshman year was really rough and challenging. And my roommate has ADHD. And we're like two peas in the pod. And so by my sophomore year, when I was in therapy, it was for an eating disorder. I was working with my therapist and I think I have ADHD. So she did the testing for me, and she was sure enough was like, yeah, you have ADHD. And kind of even in high school, I remember my junior year, my family moved, and I remember being like, I can't control anything else, so I'll control what I eat. And that was kind of the beginning of I would say I had disordered eating maybe a little bit before that, but full-blown eating disorder. And looking back, I'm like, oh, that was just me trying to control the chaos of my brain.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that makes total sense. I know I've heard a lot of women say that when they get out of the structured environment of school, that they really definitely start struggling, or a certain type of job, the way that the structure is at the job can really impact, how you're handling your ADHD, and it can come to the forefront.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And then as far as, and I don't know how much you want to get into the eating disorder, but was that a lifelong thing, or did that start when you were dealing with college and
looking back, I wouldn't say I ever had a clinical eating disorder, but most girls became very aware of my body and, would start kind of in high school. had started being like, started reading things about what you should be eating or how many calories you should be eating. And like,
So just like obsessing over it a little bit.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I would say when I moved, especially because I moved in the middle of my junior year. So like that whole summer, I didn't really know anybody. And I was in a private school, so I wasn't close to any of my peers where I lived. I was like far away. So it was like hard to make friends and have people to hang out with. So all summer, if I wasn't playing basketball, I was like reading things about nutrition and things like that. So it definitely was like a hyper fixation almost, because it was like learn everything that I possibly can about, like, for a while, like I joke with my clients that I was a walking My Fitness Pal, because it just felt like half of my brain was like just,
Yeah. I've been in that place too, where I've had the calorie counting app, and like obsessing over how many calories I'm eating. And I don't think I ever put two and two together. Is that kind of what you see with ADHD women? Is it's like they're trying to control some aspect of their day?
Yeah, I think it's control. And I think it's that external like marker for us, or having those external things sometimes can be helpful as tools of like, oh, I have no idea how much I'm eating. So being able to write everything gives me that peace of mind. And for a lot of my clients, it is either like a hyperfixation, and it's like all of your brain power goes towards tracking all the time, or it's like, I can't wrap my head around this.
Or it's gone.
Yeah. I don't have.
Oh, wow.
Even like, they were like, none of my coworkers could understand why they couldn't track. And I was like, because you have to have enough time. And someone with ADHD struggles with time management. It takes a lot of time, and to remember to do something
Remembering
isn't intuitive with, like, it doesn't, unless that is a behavior you've like, worked
fixated on.
that part of your routine. Like, you don't sit down and think, okay, I need to open up my app and put in everything that I just, ate. It might not cross your mind until like after you've already eaten it. And if you maybe are more inattentive type, you might not even remember what you ate or how much of what you ate from a few hours.
Never. I never do.
Yeah.
So you mentioned clients. So let's talk about the work that you do and kind of how you got into that. I think I can guess how you got into it, since like you're fixated and your first job, or one of your first jobs, was working with weight loss. So I can tell like you've probably been in this world. But what do you do? What kind of clients do you have?
So I'm a registered dietitian, and I got into that because I loved nutrition, and I was actually in school to be a nurse at the time, and I took a nutrition class and I loved it. And I didn't get into the second half of our nursing program because my GPA was like 0.04 or something like that, from like the cutoff of people they took, and it was only based on GPA. Anyways, but it was like, it was a blessing in disguise, because I was like, I don't think I really want to be a nurse. So I was like, I took this nutrition class. I really liked it. My teacher was a registered dietitian. I had seen a registered dietitian in high school. It didn't even cross my mind, like, oh, that's a profession for some reason. But then,
I didn't think of it either, but yeah, you don't think of it, but yeah,
and
that
so
makes sense.
I think I'm going to change paths. And I knew that I wanted to work in the intuitive eating space, which sounds funny because my first job was in weight loss, and like a lot of other dietitians, I was like, oh, I can kind of get around the like dieting, weight loss stuff and still teach intuitive eating. But that was not at all how it worked out. COVID happened, and I had to stay home from work for a couple of weeks.
We are.
And then I was like, when they passed the unemployment stuff, and I was like, they called me to come back to work, and I was like, can I just actually not, like, can I get like off? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, what am I gonna do? And I was like, I always saw dietitians, like how I found intuitive eating was seeing dietitians on Instagram talking about it. And I was struggling still with binge eating at the time in grad school. And I was like, what is this? And I was like, this is the most woo-woo thing. Like, you can't listen to your body, like absolutely ridiculous. But I had tried every other crazy diet, or just kept trying to control my food more, and it wasn't working. So I was like, I'm going to give that a try. And thinking about my own story with my relationship with food. And I was like, oh my God, there's this ADHD thing that no one is talking about. Nobody's talking about this. And like everything you find on websites at the time, like especially like from 2 years ago, like there's so much more information about ADHD compared to what there was in like 2020, which is amazing. And I was like, everything you read about food is for kids with ADHD and like how to feed your kid who's on an appetite, on a stimulant and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I was like, but all of us who, even if we, had ADHD as a kid, you become an adult and just like me, you have to still feed you. Now you have
You
even more.
still don't know how to do it, and you're in.
And
Yeah.
now you have to feed yourself versus having that structure
Yeah.
of your parents helping you.
Yeah.
So that's what
Amazing. I feel like you found the perfect spot
yeah,
for you to be in because
yeah,
you do have a pretty strong following on social media, and you have clients and you're helping people. And that's amazing. So bravo to you for finding your place.
yes. It was fun. It was so funny because my business coach worked in pediatric nutrition before she just did business coaching. And so she was like, I remember her telling her, I was like, I think I have something with ADHD and like binge eating specifically. And she was just kind of like, okay. Cause like in her head, like most people, it's like more of a kid, like something that kids struggle.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. I did a poll in like a Facebook support group, like super thankful they let me post like a survey.
Nice.
Almost all of the women on this survey said they struggled with binge eating in some way, shape, or form. And I was like, how is no one talking about this? I was like, and it's like a footnote in a lot of research papers, like you might struggle with disordered eating or an eating disorder if you have ADHD. And I'm like, to me, that seems like risky driving and things like that usually get more of the like attention in research papers. And like, those are things that can be problematic. But I was like, but we have to eat so many, several times a day, every single day.
It
So,
affects our daily life.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, and it's so important to how our brains
Our
function,
health.
our bodies function too.
Yeah.
So it's like, figuring that out and being able to support people, I think is super important.
I really hope you're enjoying this chat. I wanted to take a quick break to tell you about one of the tools that I keep in my ADHD toolbox, Evernote. Evernote is an app that I use to help keep the chaos in check. I use it to take notes, keep up with tasks, and manage my schedule all in one place. Evernote doesn't force you to organize a certain way, which is really helpful for my ADHD brain. It syncs up with other apps like Google Drive, Slack, Outlook, Gmail, and more. I'm a big fan of Evernote. It's one of the products that I recommend most to ADHDers. To learn more about Evernote, visit evernote.com. And now, back to the show. So, what are the most common things that you do see with ADHDers, like with food? What kinds of issues are you seeing when you talk to clients?
So a big one, I think the executive function piece around just being able to cook and feed yourself,
Put
like,
put meals together.
yeah, like from figuring out what to eat to going to the grocery store to prepping the food to cooking the food to to eating it,
The whole process.
the whole thing. Like there's a lot of steps to feeding ourselves.
Yeah.
And unless cooking is something that you find really rewarding, because I have some folks when I talk about like cooking overwhelm on social media, they'll be like, no, I love cooking. And then they'll, follow up like, that's not what you're saying is true, but I'm a chef. And I'm like, okay, well, this is like your area of love. Like
You've hyper focused on it. Yeah.
this is your passion versus, someone else who loves science or loves art. Cooking might not be what they get, what gives
Yeah.
them dopamine. So,
And I think for a lot of ADHDers, it is not that way.
yeah.
I think most of us, it's like an afterthought. I've had a really crazy roller coaster with food.
Yeah.
I actually recently, I'm in therapy, and my therapist recently brought up like, hey, I think maybe you should see a nutritionist. Like, you don't have a super healthy relationship with food. And I'm like, of course, I'm like shocked, like me, but like looking back, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. My weight has been like a crazy roller coaster.
Yeah.
Like it's 2:30 here today, and I've had like not much. I don't know if I've really eaten today. Like I've gone both ends of the spectrum. So I've eaten everything in sight and done a lot of binge eating
Yeah.
and drinking and just really bad habits. And then I've gone to like, okay, I just forget to eat and don't eat very much. And finding the balance has been incredibly difficult for me. It's kind of one or the other. Is that what you see as well?
Yeah. And I think they kind of play off of each other too. So like a lot of people, I call it the ADHD binge restrict cycle, where especially during the day, you get busy. doing a bunch of things and eating just doesn't pop up on your radar, or your meds suppress your appetite, or you might just not recognize hunger cues
Yeah.
as well. So even if you're not on a stimulant medication, ADHDers tend to have lower levels of interoception, which is just being able to pick up and act on body cues. So even like going to the bathroom is another example I always use, where it's like, you probably don't, a lot of folks will be like, yeah, I don't go to the bathroom until I like doing the potty dance and I'm running to the bathroom. Like, the same thing with hunger, right? It feels like that, where it's like,
I have
okay,
to eat right now. Yeah.
I'm hungry. Okay, I need food like right now. And then typically you're so ravenous at that point that you're likely to overeat or binge, just because your body's like, hey, you haven't fed me in who knows how long. And
Yeah,
now,
and for me, what I do is I tend to like at that point, I eat whatever's the easiest, whatever's the most accessible. So it's Doritos and it's whatever is handy because I don't have time. I'm ravenous at that point.
yeah.
So I definitely go through that exactly what you're talking about. So what are your tips for like combating that?
Yeah. So I think this is where like it's called in intuitive eating, it's called practical hunger. And I think it's a huge piece of intuitive eating for ADHDers who do want to actually eat intuitively, because you might not, if you're like, hey, I'm never hungry till 4 o'clock, but then I binge. It's like, okay, well, logically, we know the importance of eating regularly, especially for blood sugar and other things, but also just, that if it leads to you binging every day at 4 o'clock, then we probably need food somewhere else during the day. So I usually recommend with my clients, like eating something every 3 to 4 hours, even if it's something small, like if that just needs a snack, because that's usually around 4 to 5 hours is when your blood sugar starts to drop. And
Hmm.
that tends to be when your symptoms with ADHD can get worse. So it can be harder to make decisions about what to eat.
Shocker.
Yeah, your
So there
emotions.
could be a relationship there.
Yeah, or you might not experience like physical hunger, but you might notice like, or like stomach hunger, I should say. So you might notice like, hey, I get a headache every afternoon, or I get hangry. That's a big one for a lot of my clients. It's like, oh, that like getting frustrated at a lot of little things when they pause and check in with themselves. It's like, when's the last time I ate? It's like, okay, that's a sign.
Mm.
Probably
So
something.
that's like a question you should ask yourself when you notice
Yeah,
some
if
of
you're
the
feeling off.
hangry. Yeah.
Yeah, if your mood's feeling off, if you have a headache, if you're not sure what's going on and you're like, I don't know why I feel like this, I usually just check in, tell my clients to check in and say, what do I need right now? And just practicing that question, and it'll get easier to be able to answer over time.
Ooh,
Whether
I
that,
love that. I feel like that would work for so many things too,
yeah,
because like sometimes what you need right now is a walk, and sometimes you need
yeah,
to just sit down
yeah,
or take a breath or water. And I was thinking earlier when you were talking, I think ADHDers have a hard time remembering to eat sometimes, but
yes,
we always have drinks.
yes.
Always.
Whether or not you're actually drinking them can be another story.
No, we have a drink nearby at any time. And I don't understand. I don't know if like that's a substitute in my brain. Like, okay, I don't have time to eat, but at least I'm drinking a liquid.
Yeah.
Like, at least I have a liquid in my body. And I don't know. It's not always like healthy water. Sometimes it's stuff I shouldn't be drinking, but I do feel like we always have cups and drinks nearby. I don't know what is up with that. Like there's some sort of ADHD thing there. Like maybe we're just thirstier than the average bunch. I don't know, but it's probably related to the fact that our eating is so up and down
Yep.
that we at least we're maintaining beverages.
Yes. Yes. And I know for me, like I take Adderall. So for me, like I need, like, I get dry
Right.
mouth, so I need it. And that makes at least water is a little bit easier. Other things I recommend is like, if checking in every 3 to 4 hours is challenging, thinking about like what forms of technology might be able to assist you with that. Because I think sometimes we just need that external like pause button to actually stop and check in with ourselves, because it's very easy to
Yeah,
just,
I was wondering when you said intuitive eating, like if you set reminders for yourself, does that still count as intuitive?
yes, I will share. There's another amazing dietitian named Noreen, and she has a really good article, and I can share it with you, so you can share it in the
Yeah,
show.
we can share
But
that. Okay, great.
it's kind of like how it's kind of about adapting intuitive eating for neurodivergent folks, and that's like one of the things she talks about is like, honoring your hunger is a principle in intuitive eating, and but how do you honor your hunger if you don't feel hungry? And I remember even when I started my journey with intuitive eating, I was like, I'm on an appetite suppressant. Can I actually eat intuitively or not? And then my logic at the time was like, just eat something every 3 to 4 hours. And over time, your body does you start to become somewhat more aware of your hunger cues
Mm.
a little bit more. Like I get angry at the speed of my internet, and that's how I know that it is time to eat usually, because nothing has changed. I'll be like on Canva making a post and I'm like, why is it not like positioning correctly or whatever? And then,
Yeah.
Becca, when did you eat? And it's like, okay, it's been a little while. Let's
Yeah.
go have something to eat.
Yeah, one thing I've been trying lately is I never forget to feed my dog.
Yeah.
So I try to eat when he eats. I know that sounds silly, but like if I pour him a bowl of something, I'm like, okay, have you eaten? And I'll remind myself like to eat
Yeah.
when he eats, because for some reason I can take care of him and like make sure that he's eating, but myself is like
Yeah.
very wishy-washy. So
I have a lot of
um
share the same thing with kids. They're like, I can remember to feed my kids and I'm feeding them, but I don't remember to feed myself.
well,
So
I actually struggle with that with my
yeah.
daughter. I mean, not that she's starving or whatever, she's perfectly healthy, first of all. But when she was younger, it'd be 9 p.m. and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I've not fed you. And she won't say anything. I mean,
Yeah.
she has autism, so I don't know if it's related to the same symptoms with food, same struggles.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
but
something.
I would forget, or I'd put her food in the microwave and
Yeah.
forget. Yeah, so but it's funny, I do now, like, the dog for some reason, because he's always around and he always looks
Yeah.
hungry, like, I remember to feed him, but I have struggled with, like, keeping up with meals for, a family, which is
Yeah.
a whole 'nother task. Like, feeding
Okay.
yourself is hard with ADHD, but feeding a whole family is
Oh
very
yeah.
challenging.
Yeah. And that's where I think, again, like with technology, whether that's like alarms on a phone or like a smart home device or somewhere on your computer, or like literally scheduling it into your day if you're someone who like lives by your calendar, um,
Yeah,
so that it's a part of your day versus like, okay, I have all these things I need to do. And if eating is not on your to-do list, then there's a good chance it's not going to happen. So
right.
like, even if it just
We
means,
live and die by those to-do lists, don't we?
yeah, like, I would tell my clients, just put, like, whatever meal or snack you forget, put it on the to-do list if you're someone who does lots of to-do lists.
Mm,
So then like, if breakfast is a no-brainer for you, then you don't need to write breakfast on there because it's something you already do. But if stopping for lunch is an issue or a struggle, then maybe adding it to your to-do list or setting alarms around lunchtime. I have people who will do it, like, a little bit before and even a little bit after as, like,
a
"Have you
window.
yet?" Or, and then again,
Yeah.
the thing
I
you can.
do that actually. I set in my mind, I'm like, okay, if you haven't eaten by 11,
Yep.
get in there and get some food,
Yeah.
and that's kind of my general rule of thumb. And not only that, and like most ADHDers, you have to have like specific easy foods that you go to.
Yes.
And so that was my next like segue is,
Yeah.
okay, so if you can manage to like set an alarm and remind yourself to eat, the whole next problem we have is what to
Yes.
eat.
Yes.
And like the preparation of food and making sure that you actually have food in your house. Like, why is that a struggle, you think, for ADHDers?
I think it comes back, some of it is the executive functioning piece, and then I think the sensory piece too can be hard if you're someone whose preferences change or you're not sure like what you're going to want in that moment. It's like, oh, the food I have in my house isn't what I want, so I'm going to go grab fast food, or I'm going to get takeout,
Or
or
skip altogether?
we'll just say, screw it, I'm not eating
Yeah.
because there's nothing I want. So I think,
That's what I do. I'm like, okay, I eat tuna fish every day for lunch. That's my food. If it's not there or if an ingredient is missing, I'm like, I'm lost. I'm literally staring at the cabinet like, I don't want any of this stuff. I'm just going to skip and wait. And I don't understand why it's like that for us. I
yeah,
can't really wrap my brain around why I can't just make a meal that's not
yeah.
tuna fish.
I think we get on like I think part of it when we're like hyper fixated or like we have like, okay, this is my go-to food for a meal. I think what happens is if it something we make a lot, if we're enjoying eating it, obviously we're going to want it again if it, it meets the sensory, stuff that we
Right.
prefer. And then I think too, if it's something easy and it doesn't require a lot of executive function for you to make, then the task of eating feels approachable and doable because you've
Right.
made that tuna salad or tuna fish sandwich.
I
You've
know
made
exactly how much mayonnaise. Yeah.
everything. It's like you've done it so many times that there isn't a lot of brain power there versus like, okay, now I realize, oops, I just opened the fridge to make lunch. I don't have any mayonnaise. I can't make this for lunch now. Now I have to go actually think about what I need to make. And I'm already probably hungry at that point too. So it's going to be
Right.
hard to think through what
So
is,
it's the overwhelm of like trying to piece it together is
yeah,
what it comes back to. It's just the overwhelming, it just because at that point you're having to like start from scratch with the process.
yeah, the whole thing. And then it's like, wait, what? Yeah.
Which is crazy because you would think, I mean, I'm in my 30s, like I've eaten lots of meals. Like I know how to make food.
Yeah.
I know how to put together meals. Like I have a pretty good idea. But generally, if my food is not, if my go-to food is gone, I do kind of panic and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not going to eat, or I'm going to eat like ice cream for
Yeah.
lunch. And like I end up like eating a popsicle when really there's like not much nutritional value.
Yeah.
So like, and I've heard other professionals suggest like having a lot of easy go-to snacks.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's something that you work with your clients on,
Yeah.
and just having very easily accessible meals like Lunchables.
Yeah. Like, yeah, Lunchables, anything that like you can literally grab out of the pantry or fridge pretty much and open and eat that like isn't going to be,
Yeah.
you know, even switching from buying a big container of yogurt to buying an individual one. So you don't have to even take the step to scoop it into another bowl.
Just as easy as possible for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, because it does, or I think for a lot of my clients, I try to have them kind of identify where the barriers in the process are. And a lot of times it is that prep phase of like what part of cooking feels overwhelming or that you
Yeah.
dread or, gives you anxiety or just exhausts you. Like if it's going to the grocery store, that's another good one that's like can be very overstimulating and
Right.
exhausting. So if that means go pick up your groceries, or get them delivered or use some sort of meal kit service or something, like that's totally okay. And I think just
Yeah.
removing the idea of like what we should do or maybe what our parents or someone did that was like the quote unquote right way to do things when it comes to preparing food for ourselves. I think
Yeah.
removing that is huge. Like,
Yeah, I think meal delivery services were made for us. I mean,
oh,
I haven't actually tried any, which
yeah,
is shocking, but I do think that that is super interesting, that that's a good option, I think, for ADHDers if they can afford it, if it's like
yeah,
feasible for their diet. I
yeah.
think it's do you see a lot of clients use the meal delivery stuff?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
whether they're some of my clients will use like the prepackaged ones where like it's literally I pop this in the microwave, and especially if there's someone who's like, I order, hundreds of dollars every month of delivery food and it's not necessarily what I want to be eating, but it's quick and easy. They're like, I'd
Yeah.
rather spend the money on I'm actually saving money by getting this,
Right. Yeah,
nutritious,
healthier foods.
yeah, that I can
Yeah.
microwave. And
Yeah,
then
unfortunately, I live in a city area, so I could get Chick-fil-A to my house in like 5 minutes, and I
oh,
know this.
yep.
So it's very dangerous for
Yes.
me. It's incredibly dangerous to live somewhere where you can get food delivered at any time that you want because, yeah, you
Yes.
just
And it's
end
not
up following the craving. And
oh, yeah.
that my biggest struggle when I go into the kitchen and my tuna fish isn't there, my normal whatever,
Yeah.
nothing looks appetizing.
Yeah.
Like I don't want any other food. Like I have the time, I have the skill to prep the
Yeah.
food, but like it just doesn't look good. So I end up just kind of panicking and
Yeah.
eating nothing.
Yeah.
And then later on in the night, I eat whatever
Oh,
anyone will give to me.
yeah. Yeah, and then at the end
Yeah,
of the day, our brains are like, "I need that stimulation,
sustenance.
and I
Yeah.
need whatever I didn't get," especially if you skip a meal or something. It's like, I call it the hunger monster in the evening when it's like, I just need all of the food, and I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be satisfied until then. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's such a need for what you do.
It's
I
very,
might have to call you and get you. I mean, my therapist literally said, I think you need to
yeah,
meet with a nutritionist. Just my relationship with food has just been so crazy. I
yeah,
would be surprised to talk to an ADHDer who does not have an issue with
yeah,
food and eating.
yeah. And I
Um,
just like everything, like, or I should say, just like ADHDers can struggle with pretty much any aspect of our lives. And so I think that definitely applies to food for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we have to do every day. And we struggle with routine, we struggle with time management, and all of those things are related to how you eat. Like, you need time, you need to be able to manage your time, and you need to be
Yeah.
able to like plan a little bit with food. And I can see why ADHDers would struggle in this way. It
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yes. And then you get the added, like, we get all the other, not only do we have the issues of how to feed ourselves, but then we get all the diet culture messaging around
Oh,
what we should
what's the
be
right thing?
what we shouldn't be eating, and then all of that makes it even more challenging to make
Yeah,
food choices, to not feel bad about the food choices that you're making, even though they might be the best choice in the moment for you. But yeah, it just adds we get a whole nother layer
oh,
on.
yeah, I didn't even think about that. I mean, just anyone struggles with what to eat right
Yeah,
now because the messaging is all over the place. So
yeah.
imagine, having ADHD where you're yeah, you're kind of a step below that. And then
Yeah.
when you get there, it's oh
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah, I can see why there's a need for what you do, like I said.
And I think the cool part is, like, working on your relationship with food first and figuring out, for a lot of my clients, it's figuring out the how piece versus, like, what is the actual food I'm eating. It's more of like, how do I eat regularly? How do I remove the guilt and shame I might feel around my food choices? And just figuring out, at least for my clients, to try to figure out, like, how to work with their brains to make eating
Yeah.
as easy and as stress free, and figuring out a way to eat that works for them. And I think the cool part with intuitive eating is there isn't just like this standardized plan that you give everybody and they
Yeah.
follow it. It's really figuring out what works for you. And that might mean, hey, I eat 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, or I eat a really big breakfast and a really big dinner, and then I graze throughout the day because my meds zap my appetite, and like I can't eat a large meal when I'm on my med.
Yeah.
So I think it's great for ADHDers in that aspect. It's like, hey, I can free up the idea of how I should, quote unquote, eat,
Right.
figure out what works for me. And there's no,
Which is all we have to do. Like, that is literally all ADHDers do in life,
yeah,
is trying to figure out how to work in this system that's set
yeah,
up for us in our own way, because we don't really operate the way everyone else does.
yeah,
So we're constantly trying to figure out, like, okay, what works best for me in the workplace? What works best for me at school? What works best for me with eating? Like,
yeah,
we have our own guidelines that
yeah,
are not like other people.
yes,
And just being not like being cool with that
yeah,
concept alone, just when you can finally be cool with like accepting that you're not going to do things like everyone else, I think that puts you in a whole nother realm
yes,
of just self-compassion and grace towards yourself. And food is a piece of that puzzle. So once you can get that little chunk of like, I'm going to do it differently, it's not going to look like the way you do it, I'm
yeah,
okay with that, it works for me. Like,
yeah,
once you can get to that step, I think that's huge.
yeah. Like, I feel like a lot of people have the idea, like, oh, I have to spend hours in my kitchen on Sunday meal prepping for the week, and that's how you have to do things. And I'm like, you do not need to do that. Like, that is
Yeah.
not required. I actually enjoy cooking, but I've never been able to meal prep, because I just don't want to spend that long on a Sunday in the kitchen. Every single
I've tried it. It's
Sunday.
not sustainable for me. Like, it'll work for a short amount of time and then I'm bored with it.
Yeah.
So,
Or the sensory aspect, like, I'm gonna get bored of food. Like, unless it's unintentional, I'm like, ooh, I found this. I'm on a salad, I'm on a like taco salad kick, and it'll be like I'll eat that every single day, but it's not intentional. Versus, like, if I prepped something and told myself I'm gonna eat this by like day
I
3,
wouldn't want it anymore. Yeah, I'd be like,
or
I'm so over this meal.
yeah, or the sensory aspect. A lot of people will be like, ugh, I will get the ick, and I'm like, yes. So it's the sensory aspect too. eating things.
That is so funny. That's so reassuring to hear that, like, you also still eat, like, your comfort foods over and over and over again. Like, that's okay.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I eat avocado
that's
toast
okay.
and a fried egg pretty much every morning. Sometimes I switch it up if I don't feel like it, or like carrots and hummus has been my mid-morning snack for like at least 5 or 6
Forever.
years at this
So
point.
that's, I feel like that's a very important takeaway from this conversation is like, that's okay.
Yeah,
Like, that's fine. People in your household might tell you like that's super weird.
yeah, I like it. I'm waiting for the day that I don't like carrots and hummus, but like if
And
there's
you
nothing
can move
else,
on.
if there's
Yeah.
nothing, there will be carrots and hummus. Like if I
Oh,
travel, I
I'm
will go.
so paranoid about tuna fish that I like every time I go, we have like 20 cans of tuna fish now because like every time I go, I'm like, oh my God, I'm probably out. I have to get
Oh
some.
yeah,
And then
I'll like laugh off like 3 or 4 different varieties of hummus. I'm like, well, I don't know. Like maybe I want a spicy one, or maybe I want one that's like,
yeah.
everything bagel seasoning. I don't know.
That's a great like fixation food because it's pretty healthy. Like some of my fixation foods are not so great for me. So like ice cream before bed, probably should try to nix that one, but it is what it is. And I have had family members, comment about like, oh, you eat tuna fish like every meal or every lunch, you eat
Yeah,
tuna fish. That's super weird. How do you do that? And it's like hey, I'm alive. It's keeping me alive.
yeah. You're getting some good omega 3s, so
Yeah, I'm waiting till I move on. Taco salad just sounded really good, so maybe I'll move on to that one next. That's usually my tacos and tuna are like the two interchangeable meals for
yeah.
lunch.
I'll do like it's literally like I get a Southwest salad kit thing and like rotisserie chicken. Sometimes I usually add a little bit of extra vegetables just because I like a lot of vegetables. But
Yeah,
um, and then you have taco salad or add whatever else you want on top. So
I love that. Yeah, so I think that's just a good message. It's like if you're eating like the same food every breakfast and every lunch, but you're remembered to do it, I
yeah,
count that as a win. I feel like that's a win, 100%.
yeah,
So don't let
and
anybody bully you about it.
yeah. Well, and I think it can almost be sometimes the messaging too. It's like eating a variety of foods might for people, especially if you have sensory issues, like it might not work for you. And I think sometimes it can almost be a little bit ableism showing up with food where it's like you should
Yeah.
always eat a variety of foods or you shouldn't eat the same thing every
Right.
single day. And it's like, yes, eating variety might be ideal, but eating nothing as opposed to maybe eating the same thing over and
Something. Yeah.
over, it's going to be far better for you. So
Yeah. I appreciate that messaging because sometimes I tell myself it's okay to eat nothing and I'll just wait till the next
yeah,
meal time and I'll eat. But now I'm going to hear Becca in the back of my mind, like, it's better
something's
to eat something.
something's better than nothing. Like that's what I tell my clients. I'm like, even if it means, hey, I don't like breakfast and all I ate was like a banana, I'm like, at least you're getting started with like
Yeah.
eating,
And
and
then there's the whole other discussion we can have about like overeating and we could get into that. I'm sure that's you have a whole nother system to handle that. So maybe we'll have to have you on and we'll talk
yeah,
about binge eating and like overeating and weight and stuff because
yeah.
that's also, I mean, I've been on that side too. I'm not just 30 years of me forgetting to eat. That's not been the issue. I've had both.
Oh yeah,
Depending on what's been going on in my life and how stressed out I am and my living situation, like it's fluctuated from one to the other. So that would be a great second conversation. We can
I
talk
love-
about what to do, how to manage if you're
yeah,
eating kind of too much.
yeah.
I'd
And
love
a
to
lot
talk
of times
about
it's
that.
just that pattern of not like kind of a pendulum from restriction, whether the restriction's intentional or not. Like it could just be I forget to eat or whatever, and then usually at some point that pendulum swings the other
Swings.
way. And usually
Yeah.
for most of my clients, it's an evening. The evening time is the most challenging time because you're either,
Right.
you start to relax, you realize you haven't eaten much all day, or your meds wear off, and then you're really looking for
Mhm.
stimulation as well.
And then social functions. Oh gosh, it's a mess when I'm around other people. I just want to like if there's a charcuterie tray in front of me, it's over. It's so like fun because there's all these different things. Like that is my favorite way to eat is like a
Oh yeah,
charcuterie thing. Like,
I have
ugh,
like a little. I saw it on someone on Facebook posted it, but it's called a snackle box. So it's like a tackle box, but you put snacks in it. So like brilliant, like travel.
I need this.
Yeah, it's so great for traveling. Like I take it like when I go out on the lake with
Just the name alone.
Oh, and it's so fun because then you get to go pick out a million different things. Like, what would I like? And to even tell my clients, like, you could bring something like that to your work desk or somewhere if you struggle with, like, what.
Because we like variety too. We like the same food every day, but we also like variety. So it's a very weird blend.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, okay, I need to have all my different preferences, and it was so like for me when I made it and took it out on the lake, it was so fun because then I was like, I have all of the snacks in this one little thing, and I can pick and choose, what I want.
Oh, a snackle box.
Yeah,
I love that.
Sounds fun. So
Yeah, even just saying it is fun. All right, so we'll move on from the snackle box. I'm gonna go make one of those this weekend because we go to the beach a lot. I feel like a snackle box is perfect for the beach.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I need this. So one question I'm asking all of my guests is, so I know you've probably heard the phrase like ADHD is a superpower. Like, how do you feel about that phrase? Do you think it's a superpower or is it something else for you? It's a tough one.
I think aspects can be a superpower. I wouldn't say all of ADHD is a superpower, obviously. I think Dr. Hollowell, I remember listening to him on a podcast about it, and it was like being able to learn how to utilize ADHD as a gift for you. And I think looking at it like where your strengths are and really focusing on your strengths can be really helpful in viewing it like superpower. But acknowledging also that like there are a lot of challenges that come with ADHD and like it's not easy because I think sometimes it's like, oh, it's a superpower, makes it sound like
oh yeah, I can do anything.
Yeah, and it's like, but no, there's real challenges here.
Yeah. I think because to some people that phrase is like toxic and it can be hurtful even. But I think it is like an individual case by case basis. Like, does it feel like a superpower to you, or does it feel more like this is really hard and I would rather not have ADHD? Like, does that ever cross your mind, or do you more feel like
I love that I have ADHD.
Okay. Well, I do too, which is why I have, you're in the ADHD realm and you're online talking about it, which is why I'm online talking about it. So people who have a platform and are constantly talking about ADHD, like we're pretty fond of it. Yeah. I think we recognize that it's a asset in some ways.
Yeah.
But I do think that lots of people are not there.
Yeah.
With that.
I think there definitely were times in my life where I wished maybe I didn't struggle with things, but I think now I have kind of embraced it and that like my brain just works differently and there's really nothing I can do about that. Like I can't change that.
And sometimes it works in like really crazy ways which are really cool. So I am probably in the same, I think I agree with you on that whole concept because I do think I understand how some people just do not see it that way.
Yeah.
And because some days I do not see it that way. Some days where it's like you're really struggling at work and you're really struggling to eat and you have a headache and you're tired and like on those days, it's really challenging. But I would say for the most part, for me, I feel like it is kind of a superpower what we're capable of.
Yeah. So. I think, like for me, like I love that I can hyper focus. Like I love it. And I love being able to like connect different things or just think of things in a way that maybe other people don't, or at least more neurotypical people. Yeah. So it is just, I think if you find things about ADHD or characteristics about ADHD that, like hyper focusing, that you're like, I like this, I think you could view that aspect of it as like a superpower and, and acknowledge that, the other areas that you struggle with.
Yeah, I agree. Boom. We're agreeing there. Okay, so where can people find you, Miss Becca, and what do you want to tell the people?
I am most active on Instagram, and you can find me at ADHD.Nutritionist. And if I had to tell the listeners anything, I guess it would be allow yourself to like break free from the idea of like how you should do things when it comes to food or other aspects of your life. And that there's no shame for doing things that aren't the norm when it comes
Yeah.
to eating, and it doesn't make you weird or less than a neurotypical person.
I mean, that makes perfect sense because we are all so freaking different. Why would we ever do it all the same?
Yeah.
That makes no sense to try to do it like everyone else because we each are so drastically different. So
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. And so people can find you. You offer what, coaching services for ADHDers?
Yeah, I do a small group coaching program. It is for folks who struggle with overeating or binge eating and want to work on healing their relationship with food and learning about intuitive eating.
Nice.
And I usually start a group about every month. And if you go to the link in my bio, I do offer a free 30-minute call to see if we're a good fit together and kind of learn about how my coaching program works as well.
So it's group coaching. Do you do any one-on-one stuff?
I do some one-on-one stuff on a case-by-case basis. I have a wait list for private clients right now. So yes, I know.
No, that's great for you. I'm glad that you're busy and staying busy, but I'm sad for me because I'm going to send you a message after we leave here because my therapist will be very sad if I don't because we've been talking a lot about it.
I will say I love group coaching in the aspect that I think it can be really nice to find others that struggle with the same things and not feeling so alone. You just learn so much more in a group environment because there's just
ADHDers need it. I think we need the community. I mean, it's just a testament to your Instagram and my Instagram and how much we all need each other because all of those accounts are growing so quickly because we all do need the validation from others, and just seeing that others are going through what you're going through is so important. And I definitely understand why your group coaching classes would be very busy because
and it's so nice.
It's needed.
Yeah, and it's so nice too to have others when you have the same struggles. It's not like, how do you forget to eat lunch? It's like, hey, I remembered to eat lunch, and everyone's like, yes, good job, or like, I made this really low effort meal, and like it not being like, that's not a meal. It's like, yeah, good job,
They understand. Yeah. I run into the same thing with the podcast because I have people like not, show up late or not show up at all. And I'm like, I'm so understanding because like I do this too. So like it's helpful to have ADHDers who are like, oh yeah, I forgot to eat too. And no one's judging you. I feel like ADHDers are the least judgmental group of people that you'll find because we've been through so much and we know like what that's like. So group coaching is probably the way to go if anybody's listening and is like looking for an outlet, especially with food. If you're struggling with food and nutrition and time management with food, I think Becca's your girl.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Sweet. Well, that being said, I think I will close it out and I'll try to schedule you on again and maybe we can talk about some of the other struggles with eating that we didn't get into today. But it was very, 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 very helpful. And now I'm craving taco salad. So I'm going to try to make that happen.
Thank you so much, Sabrina.
Thanks again for listening to My Lady ADHD podcast. You can find more ADHD content online at myladyadhd.com and make sure to give me a follow on Instagram or TikTok at My Lady ADHD.